Okay, hi. Thank you for being here today. Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure, John Mooney with Tap into Scotch Plains Fanwood. It's a local online news site, and you don't have to type that all out. It's easy. It's tap into TAPinto SPF.net. Tap into SPF.net.
Thank you. So what type of journalism do you do?
Well, Tap into Scotch Plains Fanwood is a hyper local site. It means that we publish stories that are specific to the residents, the business owners, the religious groups, or the civic leaders of the two towns, Scotch Plains and Fanwood. We cover government, education, and sports, where I think a lot of your viewers will know me from. Also, community life, arts and entertainment when we're allowed to have that, and other topics. Food is a particularly popular subject on Tap Into. Restaurants opening, restaurant closings, restaurant reviews, that kind of stuff. A lot of people like to read. Typically, we try to emphasize accomplishments, people have given back to the community. I mean, you're not going to see a lot of, hard hitting investigative journalism. We try to keep it positive. We try not to focus on crime. Not that there's much of it, but it's not something that we're always going to be shouting as a headline. And then this year, or in 2020 rather, we added a whole section dedicated to the coronavirus news.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys do a lot of good things for to help inform people in our community, and I love that. I think that's really good. So what form of education did you receive to that helps you in your work with Tap into SPF?
Sure. I have a communications degree from Fordham University. I wrote for the school paper there. I covered news, sports, and culture for WFUV 90.7 FM. Always like to give a plug to my alma mater. And I gained experience, at a young age as a college student, doing interviews with newsmakers, entertainers. I covered the election and national campaign headquarters in 1984. Like, I got to do a lot of things that was, for someone who was, 19, 20 years old, it was sort of far beyond me. And, so it was good experience in that you learn how to conduct an interview when you're used to dealing with, celebrities or powerful people. You can just go ask them a question. So those are things that are, it makes doing, Scotch Plains Fanwood a piece of cake.
Okay, that's good. What would you say is the importance of your journalism? Like, what do you think is the good that it does for people?
Sure. I would say because of the digital revolution, and we see this, there are fewer and fewer print newspapers. There aren't that many journalists that are covering news from suburban towns and smaller communities because of cutbacks. I mean, the Star Ledger and the Courier News used to be able to do a lot more than they do today. They would have county reporters, and depending on the size of the town, you would have town reporters as well. Now, those days really are over. And there are weekly papers who fill that void in the way that they could, but they're struggling a little bit. And this is happening all across the country. It's not just here in Union County or just in New Jersey. So TAP sites like mine cover the municipal government meetings, which most people don't have the time or the interest to do. I mean, sometimes these meetings are 2.5 hours. The people who are watching this have probably only been there if they've been honored as a championship team or some sort of academic accomplishment or, musical accomplishment, whatever it might be. Most people don't have the time or the interest or the understanding to attend. So we give them the important news that they should know, and then we like to give the fun news that they're interested in, that's easier to digest. I mean, a lot of people are reading my site on their phone, right? They're paging through, something catches their interest, but we do have to cover the serious issues. We do have to talk about downtown redevelopment and affordable housing mandates and Board of Education decisions, and when are the kids going to go back to schools? Like, these are all important topics that we cover.
Yeah, I like that you guys try to keep it fun, but you also have to give people important information that's going on in the community. I think that's good. So what would you say are some important skills you learned as a journalist, like kind of skills that are applicable to like everyday life or other careers, in fact?
Sure. Writing skills are something we utilize here at a paper every day, an electronic news site, but I guess I'll never really stop calling it a paper. And I tell this to, high school students or college students whenever I meet them, is you can't just text all the time. You got to go into the work world, and, maybe you're saying, hey, meet me here at a certain point in time for a meeting or for lunch or something like that. But for the most part, communications is a little bit more formal. And if you know how to write well, you can do that for the rest of your life. Now, being able to succinctly communicate your ideas is important. And, that may be, for if someone pursues journalism, but even if they don't, you could be a communications director at an organization. There are people called public information officers who work in government who disseminate information. Someone's writing that. Someone writes the content that's on any website. If you go to the COVID website that the governor set up here in New Jersey, someone's got to be able to articulate that information, to have good grammar, to make sure the spelling is proper. So, if you're trained as a journalist, you know how to do this. And these are things that are needed, by government, by corporations, really any job that you go to will involve some sort of communication. So if you speak well, if you can carry a conversation, if you're well read and have a vocabulary, those are skills that you'll need no matter where you go in life and what you do for a living.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So what struggles come with being a journalist or just doing your job in general? What struggles come with that?
Well, I mean, we're in a digital era, right? News is 24/7, things happen around the clock. I sort of a history buff when it comes to the history of media. So when some of the traditional media that we're used to consuming were set up, it was a different world, right? The reason why there's a 6 o'clock newscast on the local stations is that people generally worked till 5 o'clock, and then they got home and they ate dinner, and then they watched the news. And at 6 o'clock, it was the local news, and 6:30 was more the national or international news. And newspapers have been around for a long time. With newspapers, you had a 5 o'clock deadline so they could publish the next morning. So that's how the news cycle was really for centuries. Then you had broadcast, which was a little bit more immediate in how information was disseminated. Then came cable, right? So cable made it 24/7 with things like CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, et cetera. But those, in the beginning, they didn't really have overnight. There were, some, and you'll see even like on a News 12 New Jersey, they'll have their news on a loop, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they don't have anchors there. But when you're an internet-based publication, if something happens, like I get people texting me all the time, oh my God, there's a fire over such and so. Like one thing I don't do is I don't chase ambulances. I don't chase fires generally. I mean, if it's a newsworthy fire, if it's a historic building, or if there are like 5 different towns sending fire brigades to help put the out ablaze, that's one thing. But I do try not to be at everything all the time. It's impossible for anyone to do it. So I'd say the biggest struggle is time management. Being able to shut it off, or you get home from a council meeting and it's 9 or 9:30, and then you got to write the story, and I make a judgment. Is the news that happened tonight, what happened at this meeting, is it important enough that I need to stay up and get it so it's in tomorrow's newsletter? Or did I have something equally as fun and interesting? And then, that'll be my stories for the day. So this morning, our lead story was people moving out of New Jersey. Like New Jersey is the #1 exodus state. 70% of the moves that happen in New Jersey are people leaving the state. And there were some stats. It was by United Van Lines, and the ages and the income levels and who's coming and who's going. And it was interesting, and it's something that people talk about because they're always complaining about their taxes and how much it costs to live in New Jersey. We have a high cost of living. So that was one of our stories today. What knocked that down, because everything is chronological, is Governor Murphy had a press conference today about coronavirus updates. He does Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And yesterday they opened up pre-registration for the vaccine, and 450,000 people signed on. So that's, the one, it'll probably be the top news story tomorrow in the e-news, because people subscribe. They get it on their phones. We have an e-newsletter. We have the website itself, TAPintoSPF.net. And then I have a Facebook page with about 6,500 followers, and there are different ways that people find us. So, one of the struggles is trying to balance all the things that happen. I mean, we're in the scope of the United States, 30,000 combined population's not that big, but a lot of stuff goes on here. And especially I've been doing it for a while. So people know when they have something that's going on, they'll send it to me. We're doing a coat drive. We're helping the food pantry, whatever that might be. Some other struggles that are unique to 2020, obviously, schools were out, so anything that was related to events that I typically would go to at the high school or at an elementary school, those were off limits today because kids weren't there. The sports season we had in the fall, but it was shortened. I fortunately was able to go and attend, and parents and friends appreciated that because I could take the pictures or a little video and report on what happened. So obviously that's been a struggle this year, but in a normal year it's a struggle. There are 9 varsity sports in the fall, so you can't do them all. And sometimes you have to make the decision of which we're going to cover. And I know that the football scores, the football game coverage is going to get a lot more reads than, say, the cross country. It's just the way it is. So when I'm figuring out what we're going to cover and where and why, that's that's one of the things that we have to do. And sometimes you can't do everything. So if it's a game against Westfield, if it's a championship game, we'll either be there, or, a lot of time the coaches are great and they'll send the information, and maybe someone will send a picture, and they try to help me out because it helps shine a light on the kids. So, picking and choosing, that's really the biggest struggle of what to cover, whether that's education or sports or news, because a lot of people will send us, hey, we're doing this great project, and there are all these different projects. I had probably 11 different toy drives, so I decided to do none, because if you didn't know there was a toy drive, you were living under a rock, so you could find one. And not that I had anything against all the people doing the toy drives, but there were 2 police stations, and there were lots of people doing groups, and they all met well. And that was a decision, is if I do one, then I have to do 11, and I couldn't do it.
Okay. So how would you recommend people overcome these struggles? Like how do you overcome them, or how do you try to help yourself figure out these struggles?
Well, and this is a hard one because you always want to, there are a lot of worthy stories and they want to get them out. And I think we do a very good job in doing that compared to a lot of other sites, including in the TAP network. But, we have some very strong sites in Scotch Plains and Westfield, Plainfield, Clark. We've been around the longest, so we kind of know the drill. But I mean, you have to remember that you can't do everything. So the two pieces of advice I'd give is one simple. It comes from the Cub Scouts, right? Do your best, right? I try to put the best product that I can out there in the limited amount of time that we have, on a daily basis. And the other is a phrase that a lot of, high school and college students will learn in the work world. And it's under promise and over deliver. It's rare that I'll say, yes, I'll be there. I'll cover, every single thing. I'll always tell them I'll try to make it, because then, then I don't feel as bad if I do. If I say, yes, I'm coming, it sets a standard and an expectation. And then if, and it could be non-TAP related. It could be other types of work that I'm doing or family or whatever it is. So I try not to promise to be someplace unless I'm really going to be there. And then when I do, if I can't make it, I try to do the best job covering that event that I can and sort of over deliver on the expectations, even if I wasn't there.
Okay, that's a really good advice. What did you choose? Why did you choose to start tap into SPF or be part of it?
Well, the funny thing was, in a way, it chose me. And you'll see behind me, you see a little yellow crescent moon, right? Yeah. So that's, I run a PR firm. It's called Over the Moon PR. I do, my clients are, small business lenders. I've had restaurants, financial companies, executive recruitment firms. Like, people hire me to kind of promote their brand and their business and gain them some notoriety. And sometimes when the story, warrants it, they'll make it into the TAP too, if they have something, say, related to Scotch Plains and Fanwood. So I was approached about providing content on a daily basis for this news site, and I didn't know much about it. And I said, well, I'll have to think about that, because I've never had anyone ask me this question before. Like, how do you produce basically a newspaper every day? And then how would you charge for it? Like, how would you figure out what your investment of time and what the financial recompense should be for that? So that took, some thinking. And then they came back to me and I said, I really don't know how to charge for this. And probably you wouldn't be able to afford what it would cost for me to just produce this every day. And they said, oh, well, how about would you like to take over the site? And I thought, well, it would be an opportunity. So every TAP franchise is independent. There are some towns, for the adventuresome of you, there are some towns out there that don't have TAP sites, and you could start your own. So I decided, okay, well, I can produce the content, and then I'd sell the advertising and the sponsorships is how it makes money, how I hire people that help me with it. And so that's what I do. And because I own a company, I kind of understand sales, because when you own a company, you're always doing sales. You're always looking for your next assignment. So that's really how I got into it. But, of course, as I mentioned, I had a background in being a journalist that I draw upon.
I actually find that very interesting, because I didn't know that TAP was like something that different towns had. I just thought it was like specifically for SPF. So like, is that like a thing that's always been around, that like different towns like have?
Well, it started about 2008, and the first one was in New Providence. The founder of the company, Mike Shapiro, he wanted to do something. TAP stands for the Alternative Press. It was the Alternative Press of New Providence. Then he came up with the idea of, franchising it and creating a network where we share information. So, for instance, I wrote the story about the governor's press conference today on COVID. I shared that with all the sites in the network. Sometimes I'll write a story that only has relevance to maybe Westfield. If it's a new restaurant that opens up here in Scotch Plains, well, how far are people going to really come from, in the first weeks or so to visit it, unless it's extremely unusual. So, and they'll do the same. So if something opens up, I'll share it with Westfield. The sports coverage. So if Scotch Plains is playing Governor Livingston, then I'm sharing it with Berkeley Heights. So most of the content, and ideally your content is going to be created here in Scotch Plains. But sometimes there are things that happen in other towns that people will be interested here. So like if something opens in Westfield, and the thing that comes to mind is the arcade where they have the video games. When that opened up, I covered that because it was something that I thought people from Scotch Plains would go do, or if there's a tourist attraction or something. So that's so every site is independent, and every editor makes their own decisions on what they're going to run, and then I can suggest to them, hey, I think this would be interesting to your readers, and it's their decision whether they're going to use it or not.
Oh, so you guys are kind of like all connected, and like you help each other out.
Right. I mean, it's a network. We're independent but connected. And it's just like, a TV network. So, WABC is Channel 7. It's part of the ABC network. If a big story happens in Chicago, they might get a report from the Chicago ABC reporter that they'll run here. So it's kind of the same idea as that.
Yeah, I actually think that that's like really cool. So what do you enjoy about your work? Like, what are the things that you look forward to?
Well, to be quite honest, it's fun to know what's going on in town. It's fun to have people come and tell you, hey, I'm going to be working on something. It's really going to be great. We had a guy here in town who ran 30 miles a day for 30 days to help bring clean water to, third world countries. And, how else do you find amazing stories like that? So that's one of the things that I like knowing. We're going to have a big announcement. Oh, what is it? All right. Well, you can't use it yet, but here's what's going to be happening. So, it's important to have, good relationships with the people who are running the town. In Scotch Plains, it's the mayor and the business administrator, and in Fanwood, it's the mayor. It's a little bit different form of government. That it's nice to be in the know. It's nice to have information. People, sometimes they seek my advice. Hey, I'm going to be doing this. I'm thinking about starting a business. What do you think? What do I have to do? So I'm happy to give advice when it's welcomed or solicited. And every day is different. Some days are exciting. And, for the most part, there haven't been a lot of great tragedies here. There've been some COVID tragedies and I'm not belittling those, but, there's, we're not a hotbed for negative news, right? So, I try to keep it positive. I think people here really enjoy where they live. They enjoy the lifestyle, they enjoy the people. And I like meeting them. I mean, it's, I get to meet so many people that otherwise I wouldn't know. It's fun to go someplace and people say, hey, John, it gets a little bit hard because a lot of people know me and I might have met them once and then forget their name, because there are thousands of people here. But, that's kind of the fun part. I also like covering the accomplishments, whether they're academic or sports or music or, if the towns win award, because Fanwood was named Best Small Town and Scotch Plains was named one of the healthiest towns in New Jersey. That's fun too. And, parents will appreciate it. Like I get such nice letters, thank you for running the honor roll. Thank you for highlighting, academics. Thank you for, covering our, the famous Christmas tree house, the Christmas house here in Fanwood. I guess one other thing that I'd have to say I enjoy is, I've had students of interned with me over the years, and I've watched them go on to, write for the Jerusalem Post and to become a producer at ESPN. And, it's fun to say, to say, hey, look, when you've interned with me, there are some other places you can go. And I like that. And I like helping them when I can.
You know what? I actually found what you said about meeting people that you would not meet in like normal circumstances interesting, because like I don't even know like half of the people on my street. And like when I
Right.
go like when we tried to do something for SGC, we were trying to raise money. I saw these people. I was like, wait, I've never met you in my entire life living here. So I think it's cool that you get to meet people in your town.
Well, and I mean, I know I have three kids. Two of them are juniors in high school, and an older one who's a junior in college. So, I know a lot of the families the parents of their friends and growing up and being involved in the baseball league and some of the other things that I've done. But, I mean, especially this year, I've met a lot of people, a lot of different opinions. We had the Black Lives Matter, demonstrations here. A lot of people who I never would have met before and had, no idea what they're thinking, what their experience is like. You had, just I'm involved in the Memorial Day parade committee. I meet a lot of the veterans. I mean, we had a Tuskegee Airman. We had we've had two vets who were stationed in the South Pacific, and one of them was in Japan after the bomb dropped. Like, you meet these, and they'll showing you pictures of Hiroshima with the buildings, and they were there, and I'm thinking it's amazing that you're still alive, because I'm thinking the radiation, and they were over 90 years old. So you get to meet so many people that I didn't know was here. And Mr. Nettingham, our Tuskegee Airman, lived to be 101, I believe. And I said, how come I haven't heard of you before? When they made him the Grand Marshal of the parade a number of years ago. And he said, I've been here all my life. I haven't gone anywhere. I've been here. And it was because I'm involved in TAP that I got to meet him. And what a thrill that was. And, and I can tell people, hey, there's someone special who lives here.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So where do you get inspiration from the pieces that you write? I mean, obviously it's SPF, but like, I mean, and like, our community, but are there specific like areas that you tend to look for like, information from?
Well, my email address is at the top of the page. So people, send me press information all the time, releases. Sometimes they'll email me with an idea, or just say, hey, you could stop by, or I see them. People are pretty proactive because they know I cover a lot of things. So many times the stories come to me. And they'll tell me something they think is noteworthy going on in town. Other times I'm looking at, official websites like the Scotch Plains and Famwood have COVID websites, and obviously the state does. So sometimes if I'm researching something that I'm doing, I'll do that. And then I'll be honest, sometimes I get it from social media. Someone will post on Twitter something interesting, or Facebook can generate a lot of stories. And if I see something I hadn't heard about and there's a discussion over it, and then you find out what the town's interested in. I mean, why do I do so many stories about bears? Like we've had bears come to visit Scotch Plains and Famwood a few times in 2020. If I put up a story about a bear, everyone starts talking about, where is it? Did I see it? Like, there's all this chatter, and they're clicking and getting the hits. And, I'm driven by advertisers. I last year I had 2 million hits. I mean, we're a town combined of 30,000. We had 2 million plus visits to the site, which, on all different types of news. So that's where I get it. Either people contact me directly, or, when you're on Facebook, you kind of eavesdrop on what's going on and what are the neighbors talking about.
Yeah. So what would be your final advice to aspiring journalists, like the people watching this who are interested in journalism?
Well, I would say to be realistic, right? Traditional media and news reporting are changing, and print newspapers are downsizing. It's not a growth industry, right? So if you and I've had some wonderful writers who've been able to get jobs, but you know, there are only a few jobs. There are many fewer jobs than there were a few years ago. If you want to do traditional journalism for a newspaper, right? You have your um, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, that level of journalism. That's going to be around for a while. But then again, everybody who's really good at it is going to apply to be at those jobs. And we've seen like sports coverage has been scaled back, and the the professional teams, they've got reporters who follow them, but sometimes you have bloggers who are just not even professionally trained, but they are kind of consumed, whether it's the Mets or the Devils or whoever it might be, who follow things. So are there going to be 10 New York Times caliber writers in this year's graduating class at Scotch Plains Fenwick High School? Probably not. Maybe there is one or two. Maybe there are one or two who are going to be there. So like that's one thing is you have to realize if you're going to go into journalism, it's not a growth industry right now. What's growing is digital media, online news sites like mine and hyperlocal, right? And what we're seeing is that people are paying attention. They're looking for the local COVID numbers. They want to know when the schools are going to open. There's efforts to keep the local restaurants alive. So it's just a different type of media. And sometimes I'm competing with my own readers. They'll find out some interesting information and they're putting it on Facebook before I even know about it. So like if a competing news agency has a story that I don't have yet, I'm playing catch up because a reader has sort of forced my hand. They've got it out there. So if I don't put a story, they're going to read it elsewhere instead of from me, which is sort of a new phenomenon for the media business. Now, one thing that I do differently is I'm pretty old school in the reporting. There are some media outlets, and they know who they are, who swing to the far left or the far right, and they're not shy about expressing from what angle they're coming at. I really try not to do that. And I was trained in an era where you got both sides of the story. And if you got a quote from a Republican, you got the quote from the Democrat. And I always try to do that, especially if it's controversial. You don't want to turn off your readers, right? To say, well, like someone the other day said, I was like Fox News and I was trying to, promote opinions as news. And he was talking about a story that was in my letter to the editor section. And then I usually don't respond to that type of criticism. I'm like, it says it at the top of the page, letter to the editor, and this section is opinion. I print every letter I get. Right. So that's something I've always done, whether I agree with it or I disagree with it. That's the standard that we have. And I'm consistent in that. So I give the opportunity to give both chance. And it's not only good journalism, honestly, it's good business. If I slanted one way and not the other, I could cut off half my advertising base. I get money from the political ads during election season. So if one group thinks I'm helping them and not helping, I'm helping one group and not the other, I could lose some of that. So honesty, I find, is the best policy. My other advice would be always, from the content standpoint, is always work to sharpen your writing skills. They're never taken away, whether you go into journalism or anything else. And maybe you can't thrive financially as a freelance writer, but people who like to write could do it on the side. I mean, I started, even when I worked in the city, I always like to write magazine articles, about things that interest me. But they can be applied and it maybe 21st century journalism will have new opportunities that I haven't thought of. Maybe there is something that's going to knock TAP off its pedestal in 5 years. I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I see where things are going. I see where they've come from. So I kind of have a sense of how things will go. And then, there's there's lots of opportunities in video. I could probably use more video. Video drives a lot of traffic on the internet, right? So whenever I can, I have video links in there. So aspiring journalists should know to be able to do multimedia. And who knows, maybe Instagram becomes a news outlet at some point. We don't know. They're evolving. But if you have a passion for something, pursue it.
Yeah, I actually, the Instagram thing, I'm constantly finding out like new things on Instagram that I didn't even know about. So it's also, yeah, that's a good news source. And yeah, thank you so much for participating in this interview. It was really interesting to hear, everything that you had to say. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I hope if anyone is interested in writing and practicing and you sort of getting involved and putting things on their college resume, send me an email, jmooney@tapinto.net, or just go to our website and click. There's a little icon where you could email me. So I'm always looking for new ideas and insights and voices, and if I can help aspiring people, I'll try.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching today's Professional Counsel Conference, or PCC. As always, information about our interviewees are in the description below. Click the link to our website to view some of our transcripts. Please note that only PCCs that were responded with documents or PCCs that are short may have transcripts. Follow us on Instagram for other information about volunteer opportunities and fundraisers that we host. Email us for questions, comments, or concerns at studentguidancecommittee@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.